Only 1% of the population of the USA lives in this 12% land area of the USA. The area of this empty belt is 570,000 square kilometers, which is equal to the country of Kenya in comparison. The total population of Kenya is 53 million, while 3.1 million people live in this empty belt, which is 49.9 million less than that of Kenya. This vast area includes parts of Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Colorado, and New Mexico. Despite its size, only 1% of the U.S. population lives in this region. Then why is this region so sparsely populated? Well, the United States of America is a country that is huge in both size and population. It is the fourth largest country in the world after China in area and the third most populous country in the world, but it is interesting to note that its population not evenly distributed across the country. There are large tracts of land in the middle of the country that are almost completely empty, and this is largely related to the country's population distribution. About 80% of the country's population lives in the eastern part of the country, while the other 20% live in the western part. Nowhere in the rest of the United States is there such a large piece of land that is so relatively empty. The entire area, stretching from the Canadian border to the Mexican border, is approximately 350,000 square miles. To put this number in perspective, if this area were its own state, it would be larger than any current state except Alaska, which is about 570,000 square miles. The region covers about 12% of the United States, with a total population of only 3.1 million in this belt, or less than 1% of the total population of the United States. In fact, there is a large tract of land that stretches from the northern border of Canada to the southern border of Mexico, on which relatively few people live. Before we talk about the void belt of the United States, we must first talk a little about the population distribution of the country at large. The United States as a whole is heavily focused on the eastern side of the country. In fact, basically you can draw a line across the country that divides the contiguous United States in half, with the eastern side of this line. About 80% of the country's population lives there, and on the other hand, about 20%, and this is largely due to a confluence of factors including natural geography and where the United States began its existence. In both of these cases, the eastern part of the country is less challenging geographically, but at the same time, it is also where the United States was first settled when it began as a series of colonies acquired from the British Empire. This led to the rapid and easy development of land on the East Coast. As early as 1803, the United States acquired a vast area of land from France that included much of the country's modern Midwest region. The purchase also coincided well with the Mississippi River watershed, an area so vast in volume of fresh water that it allowed not only relatively easy irrigation of agricultural land, but also trade and travel by ship. The combination of easy agriculture and easy transportation was the recipe for rapid growth. Around the same time, development began to pick up on the West Coast. For example, San Francisco was officially incorporated in 1850, just 13 years after the city of Chicago. Los Angeles was also incorporated in 1850, and Portland, Oregon was incorporated in 1851. The point is that development on the West Coast was not far behind the Midwest region, but it was stunted by a lack of quick and reliable transportation. Originally, these cities were left to themselves for much of their early existence and depended mainly on the boom and bust cycles of natural resources to drive their early populations of people. This would include the gold rush as far as Northern California in 1849. As the decades passed and transportation and livable technologies improved, other major cities in the middle of the country developed and established themselves as major population centers. Boise, Phoenix, Salt Lake City, and Denver all incorporated between 1860 and 1900. From there, the western part of the country began to develop and the population continued to grow. However, there is one area of the United States that is not as developed. Texas is home to most of the population in this belt, and there are reasons for this. But why so? In this case, we have about 3 reasons why this belt has been left so sparsely populated, even by the year 2023. The first and most prominent reason is probably within some of the Native American tribes who have used the U.S. military. There has been some fierce resistance to this. There are 5 historical tribes located within this belt of land: the Sioux tribe, the Cheyenne tribe, the Comanche tribe, and the Apache tribe. These tribes worked tirelessly to prevent American forces and American settlers from encroaching on their lands. By the late 1800s, the tribes were unfortunately decimated and forced to relocate to reservations, but by that time, development had already overtaken the region, especially in the western half of the country, due to which it was already underdeveloped. While resistance by native tribes was certainly a contributing factor during the early years of settlement, there is no reason why the land was not heavily developed later, and much of this is due to the influence of the Rocky Mountain Range right on it. Areas east of the Rocky Mountains create a rain shadow effect, in which moisture builds up on the western side, and rain falls across the region, and then nothing is left for the eastern side. This creates a region that is mostly dry. However, the largely empty area of land in the middle of the country is still relatively undeveloped, despite the potential for agriculture and trade. This is mainly because of the challenging geography and lack of infrastructure. The Great Plains region of the United States, stretching from Texas to the Canadian border, has a fascinating history and unique geography. However, despite its vast size, the region has not seen the same level of development and population growth as other parts of the country. This is due to a combination of factors, including the historical dominance of cattle ranching, which required large land holdings, fierce resistance by Native American tribes who wanted to protect their lands, and a lack of transportation infrastructure, which made it difficult to move goods and people in and out of the area. Additionally, the lack of natural resources such as coal, oil, and timber has made it less attractive for businesses and industries to move to the area, which in turn has made it less attractive for people to settle there. Despite these challenges, efforts have been made to promote development in the area, such as the Homestead Act of 1862, which offered free land to residents who are willing to develop it. While these efforts have not gone far enough to overcome the region's historical and infrastructural challenges, there is still much to explore and appreciate in the Great Plains. The Great Plains is a paradise for wildlife enthusiasts and nature lovers. The region's vast open spaces and stunning natural beauty also make it a popular destination for outdoor recreation. Whether you enjoy hiking, camping, fishing, or hunting, the Great Plains has something to offer. Although the population of the Great Plains is increasing significantly, the northern Great Plains population was 1.1 million in 2019, up 8.3% since 2010, exceeding the 6.3% growth of the nation's overall population during the same period. But the region's overall growth shows distinct patterns. The economic significance of the Great Plains. The plains have a fertile soil, and because of the slow-moving perennial watercourses and favorable climate, and they are the great agricultural tracts of the country, raising bumper crops of rice, wheat, oilseeds, sugarcane, tobacco, and jute. Natural resources of the Great Plains. The Great Plains region contains substantial energy resources, including coal, uranium, abundant oil and gas, and coalbed methane. The region's widespread fossil fuel resources have led to the recovery of several associated elements that are often found alongside gas and oil. Today, the plains serve as a major producer of livestock and crops. The Native American tribes and herds of bison that originally inhabited the plains were displaced in the 19th century through a concerted effort by the United States to settle the Great Plains and expand the nation's agriculture. On the other hand, the center of America is made up mostly of grasslands and grasslands. These are usually grasslands or dry fields, with minimal yields due to the historical dominance of animal husbandry. Large land holdings were necessary for individuals to be able to support themselves. For example, 160 acres or 1/4 square mile would have made a profitable farm for a resident of eastern Nebraska in the early 20th century. However, a 160-acre cattle ranch in western Nebraska was not profitable. A person would probably need at least 10 times that amount to survive. Another important factor is the fierce resistance put up by the Native American tribes, such as the Sioux, Cheyenne, Apache, and many others who sought to protect their land from the U.S. military and settlers. Despite their bold efforts, these tribes were eventually forced to relocate to reservations by the late 1800s. This had a significant impact on the development of the region, as the indigenous peoples were the primary inhabitants of the land, and their displacement made it easier for American forces and settlers to encroach on the land. The lack of transportation infrastructure made it difficult for goods and people to move in and out of the region. This made it difficult for people to access markets, resources, and jobs, further hindering the development of the region. Success in natural gas and oil extraction came to this land much later in the 20th century. The lack of natural resources such as coal, oil, and timber makes it difficult for any region to develop quickly. Without these resources, there was less incentive for businesses and industries to move to the area, making it less attractive for people to settle there as a result. All these factors together have contributed to the low population of this belt. Despite its vast size and unique geography, the region has not seen the same level of development and population growth as other parts of the country, while efforts have been made to promote development in the region, such as the Homestead Act of 1862, which offered free land to residents who were willing to develop it. These efforts have not been sufficient to address the challenges posed by the region's history and lack of resources and infrastructure.